we're not farmers.
Right.
Y'all let me know when it's
Yeah,
on.
that's
Is
what
it
I thought.
on?
What you said something about.
It's on?
July
Yeah, okay. Well, good afternoon. I am Doreen Carter. I'm the state representative for Georgia House District 93. And my district covers parts of DeKalb, Rockdale, and Newton County. In the new district, it'll cover DeKalb, North Rockdale, and Gwinnett County. So technically, I'm representing 4 different counties, 4 different school districts here today. I've been here, this is my 9th legislative session. It's my 8th year on the Education Committee, and I can say that I'm the ranking member on the Education Committee. I love saying that, only because I've been on the committee longer, but anyway. So thank you all for joining us today, and my other committee members would love to be here. If you guys don't know, we're currently still in the subcommittee. There were about 50 people that were in line to speak, and I think they're gonna cut that off, and then we'll go into full education committee once they finish that. So I'm gonna have to dash out and go to committee. But as you all know, education in Georgia is our largest budget item. And education, in my opinion, is that one thing when you get it, nobody can take it from you. So we're ensuring that we do everything that we can to ensure that our kids get a great education. And in particular, because the majority of our children are in public school, we really need to ensure that Georgia public schools are top ranking schools, high performing schools, right? We taught that we are the #1 place to do business, but businesses need qualified workers, and that comes from our education system. So one of the reasons we're working so hard, because we need to start raising up that Georgia is the #1 place to educate our kids. We're fighting so that Georgia is the #1 place for teachers to teach. So everything that we're doing, we're looking long range at who we believe Georgia can be. I am a native Atlantan, i.e. lifelong Georgian. So Georgia is very important to me. I graduated from Atlanta Public School, the historic J.C. Murphy High School. It was like the first integrated school in city of Atlanta, actually. Murphy has been renamed a couple of times. So if you don't know what Murphy is, maybe you've heard of Cream, and now it's Community Schools is over there on Clifton Road. But just to give you an idea why it's really important and education is so important. The 9 years that I've been here as a legislator, public education has been on attack. Every year we've had to fight against something, and most of the time it's either some type or form of a voucher, or just getting the QBE that we know is antiquated, just getting QBE funded. And I have to say that, like they say in Hamilton, sometimes, you gotta be in the room. And so one of the things that I am proud to say that by being in the room and challenging our committee leadership when they would bring legislation that would take funding from public education, I would continue to say, how are we gonna do this when we don't fully fund education? So a few years ago, we finally fully funded QBE, and I would say that the last 2 years, we've begun to start restoring some of the austerity cuts. We're still a few $100 million behind, that number is, I might exaggerate a little bit, but we've had austerity cuts a long time, and one by professional an accountant. So one of the things that I thought was important when I got elected and was assigned to the education committee, I wanted to understand the QBE formula and how the inner workings of it. But in understanding the formula, what I learned was Georgia was, I'm laughing at myself because I didn't put on makeup. People on social media just keep laughing at me. It's cool. But what I learned early on was Georgia was establishing its budget, and whatever the deficit was in the budget, that was cut out of the education budget, which is why we saw the austerity cuts. And so for years, the state of Georgia was balancing its budget off the back of education. IE is still the largest piece of the pie, but we weren't fully funding it, and we weren't really, even though we say that education is important, we really aren't funding it the way we should. So that's my little spiel. One of the reasons why we're here, and we want to hear from you. We want to thank Leader Beverly, who is the Georgia House Democratic Caucus leader, for having a priority around education, for us coming together to hear voices around our state so that we can continue to advocate to ensure that all of our children get a top quality education, that they're safe in our schools, and that our teachers are utmost respected, and they need to be compensated as a highly skilled profession. And so we're thankful that the last few years the teachers have gotten raises, but we know we need to continue to address that. And we're hopeful that we can encourage more young people to get in the education field. And I'll say this before we shift. I have a piece of legislation, HB 484, which is the retired teachers bill. The law was passed a couple years ago where retired teachers could come back into the classroom based on 3 priority areas around the reasons. Well, what we were asked that could we expand it so that we can have potentially more teachers who are retired that qualify to come back into the classroom. And so we in researching why really this is important, there's a study that came out a few months ago that said 82% of Georgia's teachers are under, that are not filled. So 82% of the schools in Georgia have not fulfilled all of their teacher positions. And which is probably why it was a priority of the governor a few years ago to find a way to bring good teachers back, but in areas where we needed them most. And so, again, I think as we continue to work, we'll continue to see how we can bring more of our teachers back in our classrooms, how we can make sure that our students have a high quality education. And yeah, so now what I'd like to do is I have a couple of our members who are here. And so we have our chairman of the Urban Affairs here with us, who are out of Augusta, not Richmond, Augusta, right?
Richmond County.
Richmond County, Augusta.
Georgia.
And then we have one of our other colleagues here from North DeKalb, Shelby and Dunwoody.
Yep.
Okay, see, I got that. Okay, see? Yeah, so I didn't see our other elected official. I would love if I could give you guys maybe about 2 minutes each, if you want to come and talk, and then we will bring up our speakers. So thank you guys again for being here today.
I hope that claps for me and not Doreen, but she did a great job. Listen, Representative Carter does a great job. She is in the Democratic caucus, she is our senior person on the Education Committee, and she does a good job keeping us aware of what's going on. I am not, I say again, I am not on the Education Committee. However, my parents were retired educators. I have a daughter who's in education now, teaching at the high school level. And we all have a big passion for this. And as she mentioned, some of the things about our workforce, who's going to train them, who's going to teach them, and things like that. They have to learn the basics first. 1, 2, 3, ABC, those things, before we start going out and doing these other trade skills. Great, they're great trade skills and things like that. However, that fundamental education is what we're talking about. We talk a little bit about vouchers, going towards schools and things like that. We're totally against that, okay? Because the argument is, well, hey, you're getting the money for your public education, but we have some extra money over here. It's no such thing as extra money. That's the money as my committee, or with the committee that I'm chair, Urban Affairs, what we're looking at is try to say, what else can we do with that money? Let's put some wraparound services around these schools. After school programs, violence reduction programs, things like that, to give the students, once they get out of the high school, school's over, they have something else to keep that mind going, keep their bodies going, trained on, so that they can continue to not get in trouble. And that's the big thing when it comes to after school. I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to come in. I just actually came down to support this event, and just know that the Democratic caucus in the House, we're behind the QBE. It's 100%, well, we fully funded it. However, someone mentioned to me that we always know that formula is what, 1982? I'm not gonna tell you that. I think I graduated around that time, but that's not telling my age, but that is true. The formula needs to be revamped. We need to take into account the things that we have going on today and probably make some tweaks to that. So again, just know that we're up here fighting, well, not fighting, but we're up here working, because we have to work across the house. We can't come up here fighting everything that we disagree with. And we push back on it, but at the end of the day, we have to make sure we get compromises. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of our members do. We talk across the aisles, we try to make things better, not for a certain segment of Georgia, but for all of Georgia. But most of all, our prized possession, and that's our students, who, I mean, at the end of the day, they're gonna be the ones making these decisions. So again, thank you for your time, and I was supposed to talk to you back, but we're gonna turn it over to Mr. Lang.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wasn't supposed to speak as well, but I'm happy to talk about it for a couple minutes. My name is Lon Tran, State Representative of House District 80, which is Northern DeKalb, Dunwoody, Doraville, and Chamblee. And so that district presents a lot of educational challenges that are drastically different from one high school to another. Dunwoody High School, their challenges compared to Cross Keys and Sequoia are very different. The immigration demographics are very different. And when you look at McNair High School in South DeKalb, that's a very different challenge from Dunwoody. So this idea of vouchers for a certain group of students does not work, because you're trying to pull students away from the problem versus solving the problem that we have, and addressing the problem with each school individually as it presents itself. I often tell folks, especially with last year, we're taking the challenges that everyday hardworking Georgians face, right? We're talking about families who are two parents are working, whether it's two parents working blue collar jobs or white collar jobs. It's usually nowadays, especially with inflation, two parents working. And so you're going to, instead of solve the challenges that everyday Georgians are facing, you're gonna say, well, we're gonna fix the education in your district by subsidizing education for the wealthy, because that's what it did last year. And from what I can tell, that's what's gonna happen this year. As the governor keeps saying school choice, it is not school choice. Not having transportation to go to the school, if you can't even put enough food on the table for your kid, is not school choice. So we gotta strengthen our public schools, the schools that our kids are at now, and talk about the root problems. Certain issues with poverty does not apply to Dunwoody High School as much as it does at McNair High School or Sequoia High School or Cross Keys High School. And so living in DeKalb, it's very clear we have an educational infrastructure with buildings that are over 50, 60, 70 years old. And for DeKalb, that's what we have to address in addition to our shortages of teachers. So I just want to close again, reiterate that to solve our hardworking Georgian families' problems with education, and across the board, you know, we are among the lowest performing schools, public schools in the nation. Our outcomes are not where these families deserve to see their kids achieve. And we can't fix that by subsidizing the wealthy. So thank you for coming out. And I'm going to turn it back to Doreen.
Thank you, and we have State Representative Lisa Campbell just came in, we're gonna let her breathe, but when she's ready, she'll come up and she'll greet you guys, but we'd like to go on and, get started with some of our guests, and let me apologize, I'm gonna have to leave, cause they are almost ready, so by the time I walk back over across the street, we'll be in full education, so, my apologies for having to go back over there. But we have Miss Tracy Nance is here. After Miss Tracy Nance, we have Mr. Fred Jones, and then we have Mr. Joe Fleming. And I know that we could talk all day about education, but we're asking if you could keep your comments to 5 minutes. And Miss E is gonna be our timekeeper. So, y'all be nice to her, this is my admin. So, but she's gonna give y'all the ding in 5 minutes. Thank you all again for coming.
All right, greetings everyone, how are you?
All right.
Do you feel good?
Yes.
Say, I feel good.
I feel good.
Do it again.
I feel good.
Now I believe you. It sure is nice to be in a friendly space today. I was gonna say this week, but that has not been the case so much. My name is Tracy Nance. I am a Georgia born and raised girl, even a Grady baby. I am an educator, I'm a mom, and I'm the 2020 and 2021 Georgia Teacher of the Year. Thank you. During that time, I traveled the state for over 27 months, meeting with educators, with principals, with legislators, with leaders, and I gotta tell you, their heart is right in this room with us. Our school leaders, our teachers, they want for every single child to be seen, to be valued, and to be heard, hands down. During my time, I was being invited by even the Department of Education to give speeches on educational equity and to talk to teachers about how to bring more socio-emotional learning into their classrooms. Now, in 2021, I joined the state school board as an ex officio member, largely part to legislation passed by this body here, thank goodness, and my eyes were wide opened. I saw the underhandedness. I saw what happened as the governor moved to have his board members pass the resolution against teaching on race, and I was so very disturbed. I'm currently on sabbatical, paying approximately $300 a month for my classroom to stay in storage, while I am here speaking up for teachers and for kids, because I saw how desperately needed that voice is and how it's missing. Now, what I really want you to know is that all of these harmful bills we're seeing, the bills that are against trans kids, against the LGBTQ population, against DEI, those do not represent parents in this state. We continually see it being called a cultural war. Well, I reject that. It is not a cultural war, it is a cultural coup. And I can tell you we're not gonna accept it and we're not gonna be silent about it. Educators and parents absolutely know that kids value the best education in the world, and they absolutely deserve representation, regardless of their identities, regardless of their familial backgrounds. Now, this year, I thought that some of these attacks might begin to simmer, but I was wrong. We've seen continued attacks against children. Children, y'all. We've seen the separation of church and state almost wholly tossed out, and it's not okay. Now, I could stand here and read you off a list of data, statistics, and questions that I want you to take into hearings and onto the floor to your colleagues, but that's not what I'm gonna do right now. I wanna tell you 3 things. 1, please, please, speak fiercely in defense of our kids. No holds barred, fiercely. And let's propose policies that actually help our kids learn and help teachers teach. For example, I have here today that I will leave a bill proposal on anti-lunch shaming. It is not the universal meals legislation that we all desire, but it does have the same outcome. Every single kid would get a meal tray, regardless of any debt on their balances, period. This would simply push schools to deal directly with parents. Because why should we be trying to collect debt from kids? They are children. The last thing I want you to do, remember those statistics and those questions? Wow, I have had the privilege over the last 2 years of getting to know some of Georgia's education advocates. The people that are in this building and running these halls, gathering all that research, gathering that data. And I can tell you, as now a part of that group, we are absolutely here for you. Let us do some of that running for you. Please reach out. I will leave my cards for you to reach out to me. You're going to hear some remarkable speakers today, many of them from this advocacy group. And I hope that you will lean into that expertise because our kids need it. And we absolutely know that the truth is the moral arc of the universe is long, but it absolutely does bend towards justice. And that's why I'm going to stay here. Thank you.
Mr. Fred Jones?
It's me, Fred's not here, I'll speak to him.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you
That's
please just
okay.
introduce yourself and
Yes,
tell the
of
way you're
course.
from? Thank you
Yes,
very much.
thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Darian Burns, and I am the Legislative and Public Policy Analyst with the Southern Education Foundation. And I'm also here speaking on behalf of Fund Georgia's Future. A number of items here that have been passed out are from Fund Georgia's Future. So, my name is Darian Burns. I'm with the Southern Education Foundation. SEF was founded just after the Civil War. We have a mission that is deeply rooted in racial equity and advancing equitable education policies for low-income students, as well as Black and brown students across the South. I'm here to express our opposition to school voucher programs, mostly due to their troubling discriminatory origins rooted in resistance to desegregation and the legacy of perpetuating systemic inequalities in education. The origin of school vouchers in Georgia can be traced back to the civil rights era, at the peak of the battle to desegregate public schools. Fueled by the state's school voucher law enacted in 1961, private school enrollment in Georgia spiked by 181% between 1950 and 1975. And in 1962, Georgia spent over $218,000 to finance scholarships for more than 1,500 students in private schools, nearly 100% of whom were white. While today's voucher programs no longer espouse segregationist intent or goals, scores of research reports prove that school vouchers do exacerbate the racial isolation of students today. School voucher programs create the illusion of choice for families, but the decision ultimately lies with the private schools. What we see is that private schools, as private entities, choose who they admit on several different characteristics, including, but not limited to, ability status, religious beliefs, sexual orientation, gender identity, or even personal characteristics like style of hair. SEF's research report on Georgia's tax credit scholarship highlights instances where student scholarship organizations restricted scholarships to students based on particular religious beliefs and national origin. And in 2019, an instance in Florida, a 6-year-old boy was denied entry to his private Christian school and elementary school for having his hair in locks. It must also be noted that private schools that accept vouchers disproportionately harm students with disabilities, as caregivers and families must often forfeit their federal protections under IDEA for their very placement in private schools, and that's if the private school chooses to accept a student to begin with. There's much more to be said about the discriminatory impacts and accessibility issues that come with school voucher programs, like highlighting their disproportionate harm to rural students and communities where private schools are often scarce, as my remarks just begin to scratch the surface. SEF advocates for policies ensuring equitable access to high-quality education and a safe and inclusive environment for all children, and voucher policies by design cannot guarantee this reality. We strongly urge you to explore alternative measures that directly address the needs of countless families and students in the state, such as targeted funding for our students living in poverty. Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to take one quick detour here because we had our chairman of the Democratic House Caucus walk in, Chairman Billy Mitchell, and I'd like him to offer a few words to indicate we got a long line up here, but please, he's one of our head leaders to make sure that we're on track.
I'm just a humble servant. I had a 45-minute speech, so I
A few minutes.
I don't know where that's coming from, but it's good to be here. Good to welcome you all to the Capitol. Lisa Morgan, president of GAE. I'm so glad to see her. If I had a teacher like her, I could have been somebody. I could have made something out of myself. But it is wonderful to see you all here advocating for good public policy, such as public education. The reality is, I will tell you, where there are good public schools, the crime rate is lower. Where there are good public schools, economic opportunities are greater. Where there are good public schools, property values are higher. And that's not necessarily the case with private schools. I will tell you that some of you may know I have been appointed by the president to a commission on higher education, particularly for the urban communities. And there was a stat that was brought to me not too long ago that just blew me away when we talk about the value of education. And that is that one semester of college for a black male, just one semester, it makes him 1,000% less likely to be incarcerated. Just one semester. And I think that's a staggering and sobering picture of what education can do for you. So we should value, we've got a warped sense of doing things in our society. We pay entertainers and athletes so much money. The highest paid public employee at the University of Georgia is the doggone football coach. It just amazes me the warped sense of reality we have in this nation. And I think that we should make sure that we pay our educators much more money. And Lisa, I hope I don't offend you there. If I were king, how we would change things up is that the closer you are to the student, the more money that we will pay you. In this warped sense of society that we have, the farther you away from the student, the more money that you make. And I just think that that's absolutely terrible. If I were king, those who had to teach the most difficult students would be paid much more money than those who pay. I think you're doing a much better job if you take a student who's here and bring him here than if you take a student that's here and you kind of maintaining. And that's just the Billy Mitchell gospel here. But let me just, as I end, let me just say this. If you ever need anything, and I mean absolutely anything, whatever you need, please contact Representative Tran, Representative Campbell, and Representative Prince. They will be able to deliver for you. Thank you so very much for having me. The president of GAE is Lisa Morgan. She's from DeKalb County. DeKalb County is a wonderful place. And those of you who don't live in DeKalb County, I don't know what you're doing with your lives. But Lisa Morgan, she does a wonderful job, and I'm glad to be here and with you here. So I understand you. Good to see you. Absolutely.
I am Lisa Morgan. I am a kindergarten teacher.
Yes.
Yes. And honored to serve as the president of the Georgia Association of Educators. And yes, I'm in my t-shirt today. I am proud to be a GAE educator. If you didn't see us all over the Capitol today, we had over 275 educators from across Georgia here today to speak up for our students and public education.
Wonderful.
And I want to ditto what Tracy said. She saved me a lot of words. I want to ditto what we discussed about vouchers. But I'm going to continue talking about vouchers because vouchers take funds that should be going to our public schools and give affluent parents a coupon for a discount on their private school tuition. That is what actually happens. And we know that in all the states that have passed these copycat laws about vouchers, 80% of the students who receive that state funding, those taxpayer dollars, was already enrolled in a private school. Okay? We're not helping children in low-income schools. We are helping parents who were already providing private school tuition. This is my 23rd year of teaching. Okay, And I will tell you that every single year of my career, I have taught in schools that were 100% students with free and reduced lunch. And my schools were always majority minority students. And my mother told me one time that she didn't know that when I grew up, because I don't have biological children, she said, I didn't know my grandchildren, that I was going to have 24 and their faces and names were going to change every year. But that's what I've got. Because my babies are my babies. And I know my parents. And that's one of the things I want to talk about all these divisive concepts and all this other mess. Okay? Educators and parents are partners in education because we have one goal, and that goal is the success of our students. And as a classroom educator, I can tell you, yes, I have taught lessons before, and my pre-K students, because I did pre-K for 2 years, and my kindergarten students went home, and what I said to that child got kind of garbled up when they went home and told the parent. But you know what my parents did? They came in the next morning and they said, Miss Morgan, I'm concerned. My daughter came home last night and said, you taught her this yesterday. You read a book. And she came home and she said something that I'm very concerned about. And I said, yeah, I'm very concerned that she came home and said that too. And we sat down, 3 of us, the father, myself, and the child. And we read the book again together. And the dad said, yes, this is what Miss Morgan read to you, and here's what she wanted you to understand, and you got it a little bit mixed up. But Miss Morgan and I are here telling you together that this is what we want you to learn. I've never forgotten that moment. And now that we're talking about parents filing complaints, I'm thankful that I had that moment, because that dad came in and he said, I'm very concerned about my child. Yes, sir, I'm very concerned about your child together. We sat down together and we worked it out. And that's what we need to be doing. Not filing complaints against teachers, not sending librarians to jail. We need to be working together for our children. So I'm gonna go back to the vouchers real quickly, because I need you all to know. We have heard that one of the concessions that they are going to make and put in the current voucher bill is that they're going to tell you, Mr. Mitchell, I need you to know this, they're going to say that they're going to codify the governor's salary increases for teachers. And if you vote against the vouchers, you're voting against the salary increases for teachers. I'm telling you right now, vote against the voucher bill, teachers will be fine, because what they're not telling you is codifying those increases for teachers only affects 8 counties in the state, 8 school districts. Because there are only 8 school districts in the state that don't have a waiver for the teacher salary scale. I can tell you the 2 districts, Webster and Beaufort City, have no waivers. They follow all state education law. They follow all state board rules. Every other district in the state is either a charter district or a strategic waiver district. The charter districts have an automatic waiver from all state laws that y'all pass and all board rules. The strategic waiver systems choose what they want to waive. And there are only 6 strategic waiver systems that have kept the minimum teacher salary scale. So right now, today, every other district in this state could say, we're not gonna pay you that raise that was passed, and we don't have to because we've waived the teacher salary scale, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So, you codifying it in law, guess what? We're not gonna pay you, and there's nothing you can do about it, we have a waiver. So, I will stand here as a kindergarten teacher and as the president of GAE and say, The waivers make that argument completely wrong. You're not helping educators like they're trying to tell you you are when you vote for something that's gonna harm public education. And they're not gonna like me for talking about these waivers at all, but yeah, I'm gonna be preaching. And the next time I see y'all, because I heard about this today, and the 6 that haven't waived it are written on my notes on my desk, but I'll have them for you the next time I say something about this. This is not gonna help our kids. And that's why the waivers harm our children. Is there anybody in this room that thinks our children need less health and physical education? Anybody? 90 school districts have waived the minimum requirement of health and physical education. Now, they don't waive a minimum requirement to give our children more. They waive a minimum requirement to give our children less. Anybody think we need fewer requirements and fewer guarantees for our students that are speakers of other languages to ensure they get the help they need? Guess what? We've got districts that have waived that. We have districts that have waived teacher certification. Okay? So they're not required to have a certified teacher in the classroom. And I'm getting the wave. I'm going to give you one more minute because I want to talk about something good. Okay? Y'all might kick me out, but I graduated from the University of Alabama. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, now there's it. Okay. But
All right, you got 30 seconds.
I got 30 seconds. Okay. But here's what I know. Defense wins championships, right? But defense can't do it alone. We gotta have some offense. So here's my offense, okay? And I want you to please support Senate Bill 105. Our bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, and maintenance personnel in our school systems are not in teacher retirement system with me. They are in a separate retirement system called Public School Employee Retirement System. Representative Mitchell's nodding his head because he's been hearing it from our bus drivers in DeKalb for years.
Absolutely.
Okay? The average retired educator in that system gets $290 a month right now. Anybody think they can survive on $290 a month? No. And that system has a legal maximum right now of the multiplier of $16.50. So a bus driver that drives the bus for 30 years, the maximum pension they can get is $495. Okay? Senate Bill 105 eliminates that maximum and installs a minimum multiplier of $17 a month. Now, for somebody that taught 30 years, that's gonna give them a $15 increase. But more importantly, it takes away that maximum. And moving forward, we can increase the benefits to whatever level that the legislature wants to appropriate the funding. So Senate Bill 105 is what I'm here to say, please do this, because we gotta play offense sometimes. We can't just play defense. And I'm gonna give you one more thing to write down. 770-715-6883. That is my cell phone number. You are welcome to use it. You are also welcome, and you have my permission, it's being recorded, you have witnesses. You have my permission to share my number with any educator in the state of Georgia. If you think they need to call me, I would be happy to talk to them. Just ask them to identify as an educator. And if you need to reach out via email, lisa.morgan@gae.org. Thank you for your attention, and I thank you for what you're doing to support our students in public education.
Thank you. Next up, for the Intercultural Development Research Association, I got Miss Michaela. I don't want to mess your last name up. But okay, good deal. Please come on up. And she's going to be followed by Miss Heather from the Georgia PTA. And I don't want to mess your last name up either, so you're going to have to do it for yourself.
Scalzini, she's not here yet. She's on her way.
Okay, good deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. My name is Michaela Arciaga. I'm the Georgia Director of Advocacy for the Intercultural Development Research Association. We just go by IDRA.
And I kind of was told to think about like that vision for education. I have several colleagues here who are going to talk to y'all about funding, so I'll spare you from hearing that for another round. My organization has a long history of advocating for justice for historically excluded students. So that's students of color, students who speak other languages, students with special needs. And so when we think about vision, we think about how do we include every student to have the best educational experience in our public schools possible, and how do we support policy which contributes to that vision. I have a big long policy priority sheet that is our big vision for Georgia, and I'm happy to give that to you, but I think a couple of things have been covered. One, we need to be looking at the way we discipline our kids, and the way we disproportionately discipline our Black boys, and can still do allow corporal punishment to be used against our students in the state. We're one of only 16 that still does allow that. That means that teachers can slap, hit, spank, or otherwise physically beat a child in our schools. And granted, speaking of those waivers, that is something that districts have the right to disallow, but the fact that it is still happening and is still disproportionately affecting so many of our kids is one of those things that when we talk about how we can be fixing our schools, we got to think about the entire school experience. I'm a former high school math teacher. I feel we focus on funding, and the fearful funding of schools frequently is one of our issues, but it's talking about what that funding does for us, right? It creates more inclusive, it gives teachers more resources to plan curriculum, to plan activities, to have their planning time protected. The value of this, I mean, I had to crowdfund my own whiteboard in Georgia. So these are the things that when we're talking about supporting our teachers, yeah. When we're talking about supporting our schools and supporting our teachers, I was a math teacher. My kids needed to be able to do math on the whiteboard. These are the things when we talk about opportunity funding, which Dr. Owens is going to do a fabulous, and Reverend Williams is going to do a great presentation around it as well. These are the opportunities that we're talking about, the chance to create these inclusive, comprehensive, culturally responsive classrooms. There's a couple things I would love to see if I had a pen to write a plan for the caucus, which is not something I do because we are a C3. I would love to see a well-organized investment in the funding of our schools. I would love to see an organized support of our support staff. There's some great bills that have been filed. House Bill 712 did not get a hearing, but that would increase our allotment for bus drivers that was mentioned, that $290 a month. That would increase that base allotment. House Bill 356 would repeal corporal punishment. House Bill 111 would adopt recommendations from a 2015 cost study about our public school finance systems. But the fact that those recommendations still ring true tells you a lot. We've been through a global pandemic, and those recommendations in that report are still true. And these are bills that have been filed more than once. These are bills that sit in the hopper or in a committee bin for months. They never see the light of day, but that would actually progress our conversation. I had to spend a majority of my time this week talking about why we needed to have high quality certified individuals with access to our students instead of talking about House Bill 510, which would secure funding for our kids for breakfast and lunch programs. And I think having a really robust public education platform serves all of our kids, serves all of our constituents, serves all of Georgia. And if we are serious about changing what Georgia looks like and changing our standing on a national stage, we have to start with education first. So thank you guys so much for giving us that space to do that. And we're happy to answer questions when we follow up. Thank you guys.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Representative Lisa Campbell. I'm from House District 35, which is in North Cobb County, Kennesaw, and Ackworth. Today I wanted to start with, so far, dictionaries have not been banned in the state of Georgia, which is a very good thing. So far, but we have to stay on alert for this. But we're allowed to use big words in the education committee hearing, right?
Third grade.
So one word I wanted to mention today is the word specious. Specious. Do we know what this word means? We probably all do. Specious reasoning, that sounds good, but it is deceptively flawed. Specious reasoning is everywhere, but it's usually used to advance agendas. It's any argument or analysis that has the apparent ring of truth or plausibility, but is actually incomplete, deceptive, or even altogether fallacious. And such arguments are attractive because they're seemingly well-reasoned or factual, and they can be deceptively persuasive. Does this sound familiar at all? We have a bill that is titled the Promise Scholarship Bill. Sounds hopeful. It sounds like a great vision, a great way forward. But it is rooted in misinformation, and it is in fact deceptive because it will actually harm our kids. So I am the daughter of a public school teacher. My mom was a high school biology teacher. My grandmother was an elementary school teacher for 20 years in Cobb County, and both of my great-grandmothers were public educators, some of the first in Texas. So I have a long-standing respect and understanding about the hard job of educating in our state. So today I just want to say I applaud and I'm really appreciative of all the experts, all the teachers, all the educators, all of the staff, all of the third-party organizations who are doing the very hard work of educating our students. And I again reiterate that I believe when you look at our budget, you will see, and I can't wait to hear Dr. Owens talk about this, our priorities. Investing in education has the biggest return on investment that our state can count on, bar none. And when we look at our investment there, we really should be thinking about where are those gaps. And so today, I just want to highlight, I am staunchly opposed to the voucher bill, and I will continue working in every capacity to share the views of my constituents who are against it, teachers who are against it, and all of our colleagues from across the state. But I think, rather than addressing the real needs, this bill, the voucher bill, is the lazy way out for legislators. I think that everyone in this room can identify that we have had 30 years prior to the last couple of years of defunding public education. And we all should be working to fix the problems that have resulted from that lack of funding. For 3 decades, we're not even remotely caught up. This bill is literally passing the buck. They literally are saying, we're not going to be involved in coming up with a solution about how to improve educational outcomes. We're literally going to write a blank check. We're giving away our responsibilities, and I think that is unconscionable. And I think we should be opposing that in every way that we can. On the flip side, we have, again, deceptive bills talking about divisive concepts. We've got to be removing pornography from our schools without a single case of pornography in the state of Georgia that I've seen, that I've heard of. We're criminalizing potentially with some of this legislation librarians. We're banning books when in fact we could and should be doing the opposite. Empowering our students with understanding of diversity. What does that mean? Other cultures, other experiences. Helping to ensure that we have equity in our opportunities. Helping to ensure that we have inclusive communities so that our students feel safe to learn, to come to us when they have questions, to foster creativity and curiosity, not the opposite. So I will continue to be pro-DEI, pro-books, pro-libraries, pro-teachers, pro-public education in all of the ways that it comes to life. And I guess the last thing that I want to share today is that in addition to all of the programs that you have talked about that I absolutely support, I think we should be focusing our attention on all those other gaps that we have. So today I dropped a bill that will be titled Georgia's Children's First Trust Fund, which will be a child care trust fund. So looking at the ages of 0 to 5, this was an idea that GBPI has shared over the summer. I thought it was really innovative and creative, looking at, and I attended the Literacy Council meetings this summer, and when I stayed after to talk to educators, what they said that they wanted, in addition to, yes, literacy resources, was we need help, we need our parents to have help before they get to us in kindergarten and first grade. And so that's another area where if we want to be allocating $6,500 to our parents to help them with education, let's give them $6,500 to help them every year cover the exorbitant cost of childcare. Let's make sure that those dollars are going to pay and train high-quality childcare teachers. This is a way that we can absolutely improve educational outcomes. This kind of reinvestment in our teachers and our parents and our students is what we need to make sure that our students really are improving and they're getting high-quality education so they're prepared for the future. So I thank everyone for coming today, and I really appreciate your input and your expertise. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Folks have their coffee, it's so quiet.
No.
My name is Hamida Labi, and I'm Senior Policy Counsel at the Legal Defense Fund. I'm originally from Atlanta, another daughter of an educator. She taught in Fulton, Clayton, and Henry counties, and I graduated from Fulton County Schools. So really excited to be here to talk with you all today about our education work over at LDF. Also in partnership with many of the organizations in the room today. So, and I know we're all waiting for Stephen's presentation. You're the all-star today. So a little bit about LDF for those that may not be as familiar. We were founded in 1940 by Thurgood Marshall. We are the nation's oldest civil rights legal organization, and for more than 80 years we have relied on the U.S. Constitution and federal and state civil rights laws to pursue equality and racial justice. People often mix us up with the NAACP as an organization, but I just want to note that we're independent from them and have been since 1957, so just a little clarity on who we are as an organization. So we're joining you today to talk a little bit about the current landscape and this very troubling national movement by some policymakers that folks have kind of talked about today already to enact curricula, book, and DEI spending bans that seek to deny the truth about our nation's history, silence dissent about ongoing discrimination, and eliminate funding for K-12 and higher education programs that lead to more inclusive and equitable learning environments. This work has already kind of been playing out here in Georgia in a couple different spaces. You know, obviously in 2022, you had the Divisive Concepts legislation, House Bill 1084. That was followed by, in 2023, efforts by the state's Professional Standards Commission to remove all references to diversity, equity, inclusion, anti-bias, cultural relevance, and other related terms from the educator recruitment and preparation guidelines. So that happened just last summer. In the same year, we saw the Lieutenant Governor go after the University System of Georgia's spending on diversity, equity, inclusion, and just yesterday, the sponsor of Senate Bill 261 talked about how the University System of Georgia had already, moved forward with banning diversity statements in their hiring practices. And I was going to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about that legislation. He actually pulled it from the agenda during yesterday evening's meeting, but did indicate an intention to bring it back next year. So I think this actually presents a real opportunity for us to be more proactive about defending, diversity and racial equity in education. So we recognize that these efforts have also expanded due to the Supreme Court's decision in the Students for Fair Admissions case. The decision only addressed, and we have brought this report, and I have enough to go around the room and some that we can leave behind as well. We really want to make sure that as folks are kind of thinking about the interpretation of that decision, that it's really cabined into what it actually says. And the decision really only eliminates the use of race as a tip in higher education admissions. It does not say that you cannot consider race whatsoever. And it is critical that we are prepared to fight back against proposals that go beyond the scope of what that decision actually says. We're already seeing other states kind of come after financial aid in other programs in higher education and in K-12 education, but especially in higher ed, that help to make our campuses more inclusive and more diverse. And so we really have to be prepared to push back against that, as well as put forth our own ideas on how we can improve diversity, because we're already, prior to that decision, even with affirmative action fully intact, we're not where we should be on access to higher education for communities of color and other historically marginalized communities. Also just want to flag when these issues come up to make sure that you all are aware of the federal guidance that was released on this. You have joint guidance from the Department of Justice and the Department of Ed on this issue, as well as guidance to kind of push back against the messaging from the other side that is trying to kind of turn the definition of discrimination in education on its head, and say that diversity, equity, inclusion is discriminatory. And so we have guidance from the federal government indicating that DEI programs do not violate Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. And so these are programs that are actually often put into place as lawful efforts by colleges and universities to address persistent barriers to equal opportunity stemming from historical and ongoing discrimination against underrepresented and marginalized communities. These programs actually help to facilitate compliance with non-discrimination and anti-discrimination law. So I wanted to make sure that we're all very clear on that as these issues continue to come up in debates. Overall, just in closing, we are very clear that denying the history and banning discussions of systemic racism upholds white supremacy. And we just saw last week, all across the news, the neo-Nazis demonstrating at the state capitol in Tennessee. Yep. That is just 3.5 hours up the road. This is a very real and pressing threat. We ask that you continue to boldly defend education that is historically accurate and inclusive of the experiences of Black Americans and other people of color, women, and LGBTQ people and other communities targeted by this coordinated backlash. Our mission at LDF is to defend and advance the full dignity and citizenship of Black people in America. We welcome an opportunity to partner with you to pursue a proactive agenda to further racial equity and ensure that Georgia remains committed to recruiting and retaining diverse faculty and students. Recruiting and retaining. I'm going to pass out these reports, and I'll be around if folks have any questions. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Jill Penn. I'm the co-president of United Campus Workers of Georgia, the Union for University System of Georgia Employees, and I'd like to speak about increasing education funding in Georgia. Currently, there is a $1 billion shortfall from the state in the mutually agreed upon higher education formula. Returning state appropriations to 75% of the higher ed budget, with the remaining 25% coming from tuition and fees, is necessary for several reasons. Reason number one, understaffing. A long-term problem at many of our institutions has been understaffing, especially of non-instructional staff. Two colleges in particular, Georgia Gwinnett College and Dalton State, have the two lowest student-to-staff ratios out of the 26 USG institutions. This is troubling because GGC and Dalton State are the only two Hispanic serving institutions in the USG. In addition, last semester the libraries at both GGC and Dalton State were closed on the weekends, and they closed at 6 p.m. during the week. When schools are understaffed, students do not get the resources they need to be successful. Reason number two, employee retention and part-time employee equity. Although full-time employees received cost of living raises in recent years, and we very much appreciate that, part-time faculty and staff have been left out. And I think this quote from part-time faculty in English, Yvonne Wichman, illustrates the chronic problem well. Georgia state colleges and universities employ thousands of part-time faculty. Without us, most institutions could not open their doors each semester. My pay for teaching 6 classes in 2021 was $17,325. To make matters worse, part-time employees have been left out of all of the recent pay increases. The COVID bonus in 2021, the COLAs in 22 and 23, the 1K retention pay supplement at the end of last year, We deserve better. Again, that was a quote from part-time faculty in English, Yvonne Wichman. State underfunding of higher education forces students to pay more for an education of a quality less than we are capable of delivering. And that is what's so frustrating. We, the employees of the University System of Georgia, have the potential and the desire to give our students so much more. More high-impact practices, more one-on-one time, more resources. This is what our students deserve. With a $16 billion surplus, we know the state has enough money. And we want to caution legislators on cutting income taxes without fully funding PK through 12 and higher education. Analysis from our friends at the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute indicates that for most Georgians, accelerating the income tax will amount to a savings of about $27 a year. On the other hand, all things considered, the state's top 1% of high income earners will save about $4,800 a year. Clearly, the income tax cuts are helping the wealthy elite, not the people who need it the most. We need to use the surplus to increase education funding. We need to move forward with bills like HB 668, the Georgia Educational Opportunity Act, to bring necessary resources to students who are living in poverty. Thank you.
Good afternoon. We've heard some great things here today. I am Minister Siobhan Williams. I'm with Partners for Faith and Justice and Together for Hope, and we're part of the Fund Georgia's Future Coalition. I live in Hepzibah, Georgia. You know, I frequently tell folks that Atlanta is in Georgia. But there's all of us throughout. I just want y'all to know that. No shade to those that are here. I'm born and raised in Georgia, born and raised in Blythe, Georgia. And so rural Georgia and the work throughout the Black Belt of Georgia is really important to me. And I've been a parent with children in public school. I've worked as a school volunteer, a tutor, and also ran our ministries conference after school tutorial program. And the reality is, in Georgia, your education is based on your zip code. Georgia is one of only 6 states that does not provide funding to educate students living in poverty. And I heard somebody mention about Georgia being #1 in business and the best place to do business, but Georgia is number 49 when it comes to the difference between low-income students and how they do on tests compared to their higher income peers. We're number 49 in all the states and DC. Governor Deal's 2015 Education Reform Commission recommended adding a weight to the way the state funds education to support these children, stating, I quote, "It has been demonstrated that many economically disadvantaged students enter kindergarten at an academic level far below their peers. However, when a student enters a Georgia school, their background, situation, and circumstances should never predetermine how much or how little they progress." Did you hear when I said that was done? Right. 2015. And here we are 9 years later since that recommendation was made, and we still have not moved a needle when it comes to educating our children living in poverty. When I hear that we fully funded the QBE, that still leaves out our children that's living in poverty. And now with the proposed caps on property taxes, the wealth gap in education will surely widen. And it's a wealth gap in our education system that's often called an achievement gap when the children performs poorly on tests and the children are labeled at risk. But I submit, children living in poverty is our promise. They will be a promise realized with opportunity weight funding that closes the poverty gap in our education system. As of 2020, Georgia had more children living in poverty than 43 other states. We only have 50 states. Georgia had more children living in poverty than 43 other states. And I'm gonna tell you, black and brown children are more likely to live in poverty than their white, Asian American, or Pacific Islander neighbors. And especially those throughout the Black Belt and in rural Georgia. But that being stated, I'm gonna tell you, Atlanta has the highest income inequality of all the major cities in the United States. So if we want to equitably deal with the wealth gap in education, research shows school funding for students in poverty is the most effective way to raise test scores. Funding directed to educate students in poverty will flow into every community in our state. Title I funding and equalization grants, they are very insufficient. An investment in our children with opportunity weight funding will give our best return on investment. And our children are worth it. And only then, when we pass a bill for opportunity weight funding, only when we close the poverty gap will we be able to no longer say that the quality of your public school education in Georgia is based on your zip code. So I'm asking all of y'all, all of our lawmakers, our policymakers, to please lift your voice for our children that live in poverty, and let's close this poverty gap.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Stephen Owens, and I'm the Education Director at the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, and we're also a member of Fund Georgia's Future. I planned to speak on the Opportunity Weight, and then I heard a snippet of what Minister Williams spoke on before this, and I was just like, I cede my time to you. And you heard just how powerfully she spoke, how informed she was of where our schools sit and the need to do right by our students. I want to speak just a little bit about the opposite side of the coin, about how vouchers do the exact opposite of that. And we have, GBPI has a long-standing opposition to legislation that funnels public funds to private schools, and therefore voucher bills, such as the remaining Senate Bill 233, the fiscal impact shows that this policy provides no benefit to this state. If just 2% of the enrollment for eligible schools take a voucher, over $43 million will be diverted from public schools. The schools in question are failing, see the quotes there, failing because the state has failed them. Over 50% of the enrollment in schools in the bottom quartile are directly certified for free lunch. Their parents receive SNAP or TANF, they're homeless, foster, migrant, or unaccompanied. And as you heard, Georgia remains one of only 6 states that has no specific funding to support these children. Some lawmakers say we can afford vouchers because public schools have plenty of money. I've heard this several times from lawmakers. I heard a lawmaker recently brag about the fact that we have the highest paid teachers in the South. I don't want to take away from the hard work the General Assembly and Governor have done to raise teacher pay, but having the highest teacher pay in the South is like having the best college football team in the North. Competition matters, right? And this is even when we control for the cost of living. That yes, we are doing better than Tennessee and South Carolina. We need to be leading the nation in this area. I've heard from others in the legislature that somehow vouchers save schools money by keeping local funds intact. Well, now hear the truth. If enough students leave, it means teachers will have to be fired. Anytime we talk about schools being better off, must grapple with this fact. Because schools have 2 types of funding, fixed and variable cost, rather, 2 types of cost. Variable costs can be changed quickly. That's teacher salaries. They can be changed quickly year after year. Fixed costs, however, remain regardless of whether a student leaves. Air conditioning still has to run if there's 10 kids in the building or if there's 1,000. We still have to have school buses. We still have to have buildings. They must be paid for, and losing a few students to a voucher can make these costs take up more of a school's budget. Any dollar that would be spent on this voucher should instead be used to protect the underfunded public schools the state has a constitutional responsibility to support. For this reason, I ask that you continue your great opposition to private school vouchers like those proposed in Senate Bill 233. Thank you.
Hi, you guys. I pop out when I can. So, good afternoon, esteemed members of the Educational Committee. My name is Erin Montgomery, and I'm the President and CEO of Georgia Educators for Equity and Justice. Today, I bring to light an issue of critical importance that not only challenges the fabric of the education system, but also calls into the question the sustainability of our commitment to future generations. Future findings from Brown University have revealed a concerning trend. Approximately 163,000 underqualified educators currently preside over our classrooms across the nation, with almost 36,000 vacancies, further deepening the educational divide. This issue hits close to home in the state of Georgia, where many Metro Atlanta school districts are compelled to fill teaching vacancies with bus drivers and support staff who, despite their best intentions, lack the necessary training to effectively support our most marginalized students. This situation just cannot continue. The phrase, "if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense," perfectly encapsulates the dilemma at hand. To effectively address the shortage of qualified educators, we must realign our priorities and recognize the necessity of offering competitive wages that reflect the significance of their role in society. Our organization conducted a study which found that on average, teachers in Metro Atlanta work an additional 12 hours beyond their contracted time each week. This unpaid overtime significantly lowers their effective hourly wage and brings it down to approximately less than $20 an hour that they're working for. This is a stark contrast to around, on average, about $25 an hour that we typically work for if we're thinking about this from, those teachers that are starting off. Coupled with the average student loan debt of about $60,000, it's clear that our educators are under immense financial strain. The issue at hand is not just an educational crisis, it's a reflection of the broader impacts of capitalism on our society. While we may not be able to rectify all the effects of capitalism, we can and must ensure that the experts developing America's next workforce are provided with a decent wage. Offering competitive salaries to educators is not merely an investment in well-being, but it's an investment in the very foundation of our future. In conclusion, I urge this committee to take decisive action. We cannot continue to overlook the invaluable contribution of our educators. By ensuring that we're fairly compensated for our dedication and expertise, we can begin to address the educational inequities that challenge the promise of our nation's future. I want you guys to support House Bill 184, the Student Teacher Promotion Act, to support the recruitment and retention of viable, qualified educators in the classroom. Thank you.
Yeah, I was doing it. Greg's not here. Greg. Yeah. We both signed up.
Let me get lost.
Well, I think that this is a close unless there are other speakers today, but I really want to thank everyone for coming. Would you like to speak?
No, I think actually Lisa probably mentioned everything I would. Obviously, we're in solidarity on the voucher bill. I'd like to thank the Democratic caucus for standing strong with us. Last year, only one Democrat, and she's no longer a Democrat, voted for the voucher bill. Good riddance to Ms. Maynard. Our key goal to defeating that is to keep those 16 Republicans that oppose the voucher bill, buck them up and support them and try to keep them. But I've heard that we've lost 3 of those Republicans. It was an 85 vote, the bill got 85 votes, where you need 91 to pass a bill in the House. So they need 6 votes, plus there's a vacancy, so they actually need 7 votes. So you can do the math. We've got to have those Republicans stay with us. Lisa probably mentioned what you just mentioned, which is an exciting bill that we're excited about. Exciting bills to be excited about. Sounds weird. Carolyn Hughley's bill on student teaching and compensate them for their time. These are students that are enrolled full time. They're working 40 hours a week in student teaching, and one today I met has 3 jobs. But some of them are actually under contract with their colleges of education, preventing them from having a second job, a job in addition to their student teaching. And of course, they get nothing for student teaching experience, but no. And it's a real financial hardship. So I'm delighted what Carolyn has been doing on that bill. And then I hope Lisa mentioned the retirement bill for our cafeteria workers, bus drivers. It's just miserable. Literally, the average monthly benefit in retirement for someone in those categories is $290 a month. And many of them are working in school districts that are not paying into Social Security for their benefit. So the school bus drivers I know in Cobb County, where my kids went to school, they were picking up kids before sunrise and dropping them off after sunset. And they may have 2-hour gap in the middle of their day, but it's not enough to really have a meaningful job that would pay retirement benefits. So those are some of the initiatives. I hope I wasn't too duplicative. But Lisa, thank you for all the work you're doing, and thank the caucus for everything y'all are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in closing, thank you to everyone, all of the partners, the experts, the teachers, the educators, the staff. Yes.
I want to ask, make a statement. I'm a teacher. I taught 38 years, 15 in Atlanta. During the cheating scandal, I was president of the local. I was on the front line. And when I listen to everything that's been said, it comes back to a book. And I want everybody to hear this loud and clear, because it was mentioned that where you have good schools, you have low crime. Where you have good schools, you have economic development. No. According to Berliner and Biddle in the book A Manufactured Crisis, if your school has 5% or less Title I students, you will score #1 on any test in the world. If your school has 75% or more Title I students, you score barely above Mexico. It is the reverse. Where you have economic development, you have good schools, because our kids are exposed. Our kids have opportunities. Our kids have this. And when you hear vouchers, when you hear charter schools, they want to always say, we want school choice. You've always had school choice. It's called pay for it. But right next door in the state of Alabama, the city of Mobile, you need to look at a system that only has 2 charter schools, and they're state-run. They're not anything the local wanted. They have a series of magnet schools that are 100% public schools. You have a voice. You can go to the school board and say something. So when we hear our voices speaking, tell them you want choice, get some magnet schools, keep them public. Stop trying to do, because our schools, our kids can go anywhere to meet their needs. And that's something we can look at as a collective body and really bring forth to all of our 50 states. And I just wanted to say that because it's really, I'm the education chair for the Mobile NAACP. I've taught 38 years, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Ohio. And I know what I've seen and what everybody said is true. But thank y'all for the work you do. But I want you to hear from the teacher.
Thank you. So I think we're a wrap. We'll just say we stay committed to ensuring that, yes, we're number one for business, but we will not rest and we are not satisfied until we are choosing to invest in public education so that we are number one for all students in Georgia, not just some students, all students in Georgia, and we will get there. So thank you all for coming.